Hi, folks. I'm Jason Keeley, your Starfinder developer, and you're here we're the panel Ask the Experts, Starfinder RPG edition. You've got questions, we'll attempt to provide answers for you, and feel free to pop those questions down in the chat. I'll be looking at them and asking my distinguished colleagues here what they think. And speaking of them, let's go around and say who will be with us today. Joe, why don't you introduce yourself and give us a tiny bit of trivia about you?
Wow, what a surprise.
Yeah.
I'm Joe Piscini, and cool trivia about me is I'm the lead designer for the Starfinder role-playing game.
Let me ask you this. I got the first question for you. When is that
Okay.
creature in the image behind you going to appear in an alien archive?
Any day now.
Any day now. Okay, fair enough. We also have Jason Tondro.
Hey, everybody. I'm a developer for Starfinder. I do mostly the adventure paths. Obscure trivia. I wrote a comic book for Robert Kirkman before he was famous. Like he's, the Walking Dead guy. And Robert Kirkman called me the nicest guy in comics. Of course, he's probably met a lot of nicer people since then.
That's pretty awesome. All right. Why don't we just dive right into this? Because I think we have a question here from J Bowman 12,000. They ask, our campaign story structure means we lack cash providing patrons, and we've been having trouble maintaining our gear level short of stripping every encounter to the wainscoting. Nice use of wainscoting.
Wow.
How do you handle seeding treasure in your adventures? Have NPCs wearing level appropriate PC gear? Just assume that everything lootable is for looting. More art pieces, UPBs, cred sticks lying around that can be redeemed for face value. Anyone want to jump in on that? Jake, I see you nodding a bunch, so why don't you say a few things?
I run a weekly Starfinder game. I run the game every week, and my players have exactly this issue. They're not trained to loot bodies. It's not something that their characters would normally do. And the players are used to coming from a lot of other games that are maybe more story based and less gear focused or credit focused. And so they have exactly this problem. And I have brainstormed a bunch of ways to fix it. I have even gone so far as to create a loot finder crate service for Starfinder, where the player characters in the game subscribe to Loot Finder that mails them gear, level appropriate gear every time they level up.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to go that route, think about ways that you can just give the characters big credit rewards from NPCs as sort of story awards or not. Then they can just get a bunch of credits for something and they can spend it how they want. And they don't have to worry about looting bodies. So maybe they get rewards or they get bounties or they do jobs for people, whether it's transporting stuff or just whatever. There's a million ways you can do it,
They've got the big NPC who's so paranoid that they don't trust the bank. So they have all of their cash on one cred stick. You can just get off their body when they're dead.
Right. Yes. And I've talked to players who also have similar problems, other GMs. And they just tell the players, okay, you leveled up, just take the money. I mean, we already do this for starships. When you level up, your starship gets more build points. Well, so carry that through to players and say, well, you just get more credits. Who knows where you got it from? Just spend it.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. The GM who asked this question, you're doing the right thing. You're keeping an eye on it. That's good. Solve it, and your players will be happy for it.
Awesome. Joe, do you have any thoughts on that?
Well said. I
well
would
spoken.
If they were using our official APs, what advice would you have for them, do you think?
I mean, we do since the gear sold is only at 10% of the cash value. I tend to factor it into the treasure given out, but it's such a small amount. And what we do in APs is to essentially give out about twice as much treasure you will actually need, because our question askers group might not be looting everybody, and they might not find that room that has a bunch of secret treasure in it. So it's just in there to make sure that you have enough. And as a GM, then you'll have to keep an eye on, make sure that if they do happen to find everything, maybe you need to later on in the next volume, take that big treasure cache out of the scenario. All right, I think we have another question here from JW Mangrum, who says, "So, what's the deal with Kamos and Corpsicum? I'm not sure what any of that means. Does that sound like? Does that ring a bell
No.
to anybody?"
I'm going to search our PDFs for that.
Okay, let me look on that. Look on that real quick, Joe. And we'll come back to that one because it's Corpsicum sounds like something that we maybe should have.
It sure does. Yeah.
It's for the Corpse Fleet. It's like I can imagine it's some kind of Corpse Fleet branded sriracha.
It's a rare material produced when water seeps through the Kamos cliffside burial somethings.
Oh
grounds.
wow.
Oh, it's what Astral Extractions. Yeah.
Okay.
Discovered. It's a whole Castrovel thing. Interesting.
What the deal with it is, JW Mangrum, whatever you'd like it to be for your campaign at this point. We haven't answered this question. It's clearly slipped by a lot of our notices until now, but maybe not now that it's in the back of our heads. Maybe you'll see something in the future about all that.
That's definitely something we do, right? Is even when doing new Alien Archives, for instance, we just read through some of the flavor that we've already put out there and go, "Oh, that sounds really cool." And then we might not get to the Corpsicum part before we've already got 10 new ideas, which exactly. You are welcome to do the same because that's kind of why we put it out there.
Here's not a question, just something I'd like to point out in chat from Batusai CR. Jason Keeley, the best Tengu ever. Thank you. As the moderator of this panel, I'll get to do that. All right.
You could have at least phrased that as a question.
It wasn't a question.
Ask one of us
ever.
Yeah. Then I would of course say yes, you are.
Thank you, Jim. Here's an actual question from Saul Jasal. What is your recommended source for functional examples of the various features, computers, biometrics, and magic blending together seamlessly? Is that like real life? Because that doesn't exist. Functional examples of various features blending together. How would you, Jake? How would you say that all of that working together?
Think of some obvious examples are weapons with weapon fusions, right? So like you can have your laser rifle, but then you buy your your fiery or whatever one of your various weapon fusions that make your weapon magical and also give it a new special effect or a new critical hit effect or some other fancy power, like you can call it to you, right? So, and those are very low level, like you can buy those at first level. So a character can end up with a magic weapon, a magic laser gun, pretty much right away.
And we even say in the core rulebook, right, that often affects the appearance of the item. That's why I like to think of, it's very clearly magical because now there's like glowing skulls and chains on it.
A lot of our art, like the art for the various armors. I remember when I opened up Armory and we had that cool like Xeno Druid armor that's like all plants and stuff. And a lot of that stuff looked very intensely cool magic and technology brought together. And I like that.
Yeah, all our biomechanical ships, again, from the Xenowardens and like the Raxalites ships that are found somewhere in the Attack of the Swarm AP. There's an article about that. And there's probably, I think some of that got picked up a little bit for some, at least the biomechanical system. So like a tree spaceship, which you might see in a comic book like Saga, right? Yeah. That weird tree spaceship. We can, that's something you could do in Starfinder with some tweaking of the cosmetics. And because we have the rules for it, basically, right? You just biomechanical spaceship just needs to be fed every once in a while.
And I would look at the Technomancer also is kind of the quintessential example of magic interfacing with technology.
Here's another question from Dominus Ex Machina. I had to read that correctly because all the words are smushed together. Real chance of accidentally reading that wrong. But any chance of us getting a Starfinder source book on the worlds of the vast, including those of the Atlantic Star Empire at some point in the future? I'm going to say that basically, I think Rob McCreary said this a bunch of times. We've done a book on the Pack Worlds. We've done a book on Near Space. There are basically 3 chunks of our setting that are divided into Pack Worlds, Near Space, and the Vast. Yeah. So is there a chance? I would say there's a 99% chance that we'll get one in the near future. When will that be? We cannot say.
Yeah, we all want to do it. Everybody here wants to do it. It's a matter of finding the time and the resources to be able to do it and the right time to do it.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of there's a lot of must-do books.
Yep.
Indeed.
But yeah, we all want it. We all have a lot of great ideas that we want to put into it and a lot of adventures we could write in those spaces. A lot of our adventure paths are going to the Vast. So you'll see some expansion there.
Yeah, it's always a good place to. I mean, yeah. Again, it's not a full source book, but you check out any AP volume. Look in the back, and our Codex of Worlds might have a single planet that might be in the best, might be in near space, might be somewhere else. But that's just always a good place for maybe an adventure to start. Moving on. A question from Don Skurlock Games or Don's Curlock Games. What advice do you have for a new RPG designer regarding design, rules, story, etc.? Do we have a whole other panel that we can set aside for this question?
We could, really.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jason, if you want.
No, I thought I heard Jake say don't.
No, I said Joe. I was gonna
Joe. Fair enough.
Joe,
the answer is do it. No, but because
unlike Jake, I have faith in you. I think you can do it. No, I would say keep it simple. This is going to sound awful for people that are really excited to get into the into the space, but I would say honestly, keep it simple and don't reinvent the wheel to start. There's nothing wrong with looking at what has worked well. Like first of all, play a lot of games. To play all different kinds of games and learn what works and doesn't work about each of them, what you like and don't like about each of them, and then try it yourself and fail a bunch and try some more. But definitely the thing I see people fall down on the most is trying to show the world that they've got like the most genius, unique thing ever right out the gate. And it can happen, but it's hard to do, and it's hard to do right. And it's really hard to do without drawing on tons and tons of really solid ideas that are already out there. Like there's nothing wrong with building on a solid foundation. So I would say don't put too much pressure on yourself to magically have created something no one has ever seen in any way before, and do what you think is fun, and keep it simple, because it's just a lot easier to have a pared down rule set that people at the table can actually play with and enjoy quickly than it is to have something that might be you might have balanced it perfectly in your spreadsheets, which, by the way, learn to love spreadsheets if you want to do anything with dice rolls in it, for instance. But it's not necessarily going to translate to at the table play. So gosh, yeah, we could do a whole panel, couldn't we? But I'll stop there.
That's okay. Because I want to just reiterate what you said. Excellent advice there. And sort of like think about like it's all like writing in a lot of ways too. Like write something that you kind of know. There's nothing wrong with starting like, I want to write a novel. You don't have to jump into that novel right away, right? You can write a bunch of short stories. You can write a story that's set in the universe of your favorite TV show. If you're not going to try to publish that for money, there's nothing wrong with that, to sort of get your chops going and figure, oh, this is what I like about this genre, or this this kind of thing, and this is the kind of thing I like writing. I like writing dialogue more than anything else, right? So maybe write something that's more dialogue based, and you can find out what you are good at and what you need to work on, and then work on that stuff if you want to. Focus on what you're good at, and same with creating an RPG stuff. Maybe you don't write a whole new game right out of the bat. Maybe you just write some feats for Starfinder or Pathfinder or something like that. There are places where you could get that out there, stuff like Wayfinder or your own. You publish it under the OGL license and whatnot. But maybe you're just writing it for your home game. Try it out for on your group. See how it plays. Playtest stuff that's just like, here's Starfinder, but we're gonna really focus more on vehicles. So I've created this vehicle thing, and then from there maybe you can figure out, maybe Starfinder's got a lot of choices, and I just want to pare this down to something that's just about picking your best car, right? And maybe I make a car role-playing game, and you sort of maybe then again, with keeping it simple, start drop some simple rules and start testing that out. So it's all an iterative process in a lot of ways. It could take a while. So yeah, be prepared for it to take a while. And if you're anything like me, try not to give up immediately if you're not good at something. I know that is something that I struggle with personally. Okay, shall we move on?
Can I tack on to that really quick?
Yeah, please do. I'm going to look for another question.
Cool. It reminded me, you're talking about other people, playtesting and that kind of thing. Definitely working with other people is a great way to improve as well, because people will plug the holes that you have and help you see things that you're missing. And of course, you want to make sure that they're interested before you thrust your creations upon them. But especially collaborative relationships can be great. And don't worry too much about your stuff being stolen. It takes a lot of work to get an idea out into the world, so it's really not going to happen that much. And we should plug our friends at Freelance Forge, who are
Oh yeah,
a great community of freelancers that work not just with Paizo but other companies, and they're always welcoming new people. So that's, I think, freelanceforge.net, but if you Google Freelance Forge, you'll find them.
you'll find it,
And there's some awesome people in there that can help you get started.
Can I add something just real brief?
Sure thing.
Please.
I just want to note that a lot of the things that I was thinking as Joe and Keely were both talking, I had this list of things I wanted to say, and I just kind of marked them all off as Joe and Keely talked. So listen to everything they just said and rewind and take good notes. But what I want to just suggest is figure out what your ultimate goal is real early. Because if you're just making a game for your table and like your players are on your table and you're like your regular group or whatever, like that's a brilliant fun. Like that is not to be underestimated. Like you don't have to like go to graphic design and layout and go to publishing, and you don't have to worry about any of that shit. If all you want to do is play design a great fun game, ongoing campaign or one shot or whatever for your table. But if you do want to do that thing, if your goal is the hardback with your name on it, and I'm not throwing any shade at that either, because that's
nice to have one.
It's tremendously gratifying to see that book come in the mail and say I made this thing. Well, but that's a whole different process, right? Like you got a whole different bunch of hurdles to jump through, and some training and some new skills, and you're going to have to build a team, because you can't do this stuff all by yourself. I mean, there are some people that do, of course, but God love them. I'm not one of them. And you need people. You're going to need graphic design people, or you're going to need, artists, or you're going to need editors or other play testers. You're going to need, like Joe was talking about, you're going to need other designers to kind of help you fill in the blanks on the things that you're not good at, or to help give you a point of view from outside your bubble. And so sit down and give a think and decide what your ultimate goal is, so that you can just do that and not get off track trying to do something when you don't really need to, if that's not your goal. That was it.
Got a dog agreeing with you over here.
Nice.
Yeah, I got another question here from Darth Charles 1, who says they love the Starfinder system and setting, but the rules for Starship and vehicle combat are intimidating to them. What are some ways to slowly break a newbie GM and players into Starfighter and vehicle combat? Any advice on that?
Yeah, pick one, first of all.
True.
Don't try to jam both into a session. Assume that either one will take a session. Just set aside the time just for your very first one. No one knows what they're doing. Just allow ample time so you don't feel rushed through the process. And it's something I found really useful, especially for starships, although I could see this applying to vehicle combat too, is having just a little card that tells you if you are this, because Starship combat, you're broken into, every player has a role in Starship combat, like chief mate or science officer or what have you. And they have a pretty limited set of actions to choose from. And so rather than, if I'm a player, rather than having to understand how all of Starship combat works, I can focus on how my role on the ship works. And if you just give them, this is what the science officer can do, and depending on what how many ranks they have in a given skill or what level they are, they're going to have a pretty limited set of options that should give them, a feeling of agency without overwhelming them with too much information. Now, the GM is still going to have to pretty much know how everything works because they're running an entire starship. But you could, hopefully you're playing with people who are patient and loving, and will be like, hey, if you're the GM and you need to roll for your science officer, just be like, hey, you have the science officer card, right? Like, what can I do?
Yeah.
It's not a big deal, right? You're all learning together. And then once you've done a couple, then I think it flows pretty well. And then vehicle combat, you could do a similar thing with sort of the actions that are available. And I don't have the rules reference cards that we put out as an accessory memorized, but there might be some in there that would help you. I think with vehicle combat, I'm not sure we were able to fit Starship combat into that deck of cards, but someone who has it should take a look and see.
Looking around.
Yeah. But yeah, that's a good
Just
question.
add on to that a little bit, if I might. The first, I would love to have some play mats with like the roles with all of the different actions listed on there, and then the players. Of course, now we're on a virtual world now, so we don't really have physical game aids anymore. Like, the play mat is kind of maybe a pre-COVID artifact. But one of the reasons, the other thing I would really recommend is we've done some really great kind of demonstration videos for some of these things. Like John Compton did a Starship combat, sample Starship combat with a few of our fellow coworkers from Paizo. And you can watch, if you're one of those players that likes to learn things from YouTube, that's a great way to learn. But one of the main problems, like Joe is saying, once you play it a few times, it goes smoother. The problem is that often Starship combat and vehicle chases happen so infrequently that everybody's forgotten the rules by the time that they do it again. So it's like every time you do one, it's for the first time. If you're doing a Fast and the Furious in space and everyone's got vehicles every game, which would be a fantastic AP, by the way, I would love to do that. Or if you're doing a game where everyone has, if you're doing X-Wing Rogue Squadron, where everyone's in a starfighter every game, this will become as easy to do as tactical combat. You will all know it. You'll be doing it all the time. So it'll become regular. But if it's not, if it's something you're only going to be doing once every few game sessions, then yeah, give it more time, give it the space that it needs, and everybody just kind of realize, well, we're all kind of trying to remember stuff that we've forgotten from 2 months ago.
Indeed. It's a thing that even like myself will be like, I've got this Starship combat coming up, I know, in the adventure, right? But we're about half hour before the end of the session. So but I'm going to end it early because we're not going to start Starship combat right this minute, even though it might be fast, because we all know it well enough. But giving it the space and time it needs is a very good advice. Moving on, I just want to kind of call out our good friend Vanessa Hoskins here, who does say, is giving big vats of biomatter / UPBs a good method of loot distribution, which is something that is definitely prevalent in her threefold conspiracy adventure, the Cradle Infestation, which just has, you go to the science facility and they just have this, here's a big pile of goo that's that functions as UPBs if you want to make some biotechnology out of it. So the answer is yes. Another question, well, not a question, apparently, from Einpar Kirksey, but I want to read this anyway because it is nice. They just want to say that the Roll20 integration is nice for streaming the game and for players who may struggle with the additional rules when coming from other less intensive systems. Thanks. You're welcome, but obviously that's all Roll20. We work with them, of course, but there's some great programmers and whatnot who get all that stuff into the system, so that you can even like putting the maps in from our adventure pass when you can and scenarios when you can if you can afford to buy them, it sort of does does like 95% of the work for you. Cool.
I've been running my campaign on Fantasy Grounds Unity, and it's gone pretty smooth as well.
Oh, okay. Great.
It also has all of the adventure pass and everything already preloaded. And it's so like you can literally you click on your character, you click on the target, it rolls all of your attack rolls and the damage and tracks the hit points and everything. Like it very cool.
All right. Just look for another question here.
I see one.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Can JRock 9430?
Okay.
I'm gonna parse that number. Oh yeah.
Fair enough. Nothing. Never mind. Please read it up.
It says, can you please speak to PF2's action economy and the possibility of Starfinder adopting it? Yeah, it's awesome. The 3 action economy is amazing, and I think it's universally loved here at Paizo and around the world.
Fingers crossed around the world.
Yeah, I would not hold your breath that Starfinder is going to fundamentally change its action economy. So
yeah,
the possibility is vanishingly small because we've built the whole game around. It's tempting to think that you could just change the action economy, make a few tweaks here and there, but it is so fundamental to the engine of the system that everything would break. So I do like to think of Starfinder and Pathfinder sort of leapfrogging each other and learning from each other. Right. And so whenever we have the opportunity for new rules systems, thinking of how much I should say about a book that's coming out, but nah, we'll leave it. But we're constantly improving both games by learning from the other game. And so this is one change that I would not expect to see coming. But
okay. Hey, we're back. Talking about downtime activities, especially in things like APs, where you might have a lot of travel time in the drift, going from one system to another. Especially in Attack of the Swarm, their soldier types, they should be probably they'll be training, maybe retraining, doing some camaraderie-ness. That's not a word. I write words for a living. I should know that. You know, palling around, hanging out.
Yeah, maintaining equipment is something I could definitely see them doing.
Definitely.
Rebuilding
Definitely.
drones.
There's a war on, so you always want to try to get wherever you're going as fast as possible. So there's a downtime activity for shaving a couple of days off your travel time, stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
work out. You pump that iron.
And I guess the way to, like, you know, those are also sort of ideas of what they could be doing. Which way to handle it is just sort of you don't need to plop the entirety of the downtime rules in front of your players and be like, pick one of those for every day, for every week we're in the drift. Just be like, ask them generally, what do they want to do? Well, how are you spending this time? You're going to be in the drift for 16 days, and then just like, oh well, that sounds a lot like the pump iron downtime activity. And this is how that works, and give them the the information. Does that sound like you want to do? Yeah, okay, and you'll get a plus whatever it is for doing that. So that's how I would handle it. Just to be pretty straightforward. The other reason, you can just also just sort of hand wave that whole trip, if you like, or just let's see what would be good. Jake, put you on the spot right now.
Sure.
A good mini side quest to have during a trip in the drift during the Attack of the Swarm AP, say around level 6.
Well, clearly some swarm have smuggled themselves onto your ship.
Ooh, there you go.
Right, so they're hidden in your cargo bay, or they're hidden in some part of the ship, and you can do it like a cat and mouse thing. Maybe you don't know what they are. Maybe if you're, depending on what kind of swarm you've picked, you can even kind of fake out maybe what they are or what they aren't, so the players may not know what they are at first. So yeah, that's what I would do, and that would give you a chance to use the map of the player's starship, which we don't often get a lot to do. And yeah, that's what I would do. I would do go all alien on
it. Always good.
Yeah.
Our good friend Ron Levine is and other people are positing that I am a reptoid. I am not a reptoid. And then if I could, I would just nictate my eyeball.
That's exactly what a reptoid would say.
Well, what am I supposed to do with this? All right, fair enough.
Well, Ron is even saying further that it's everyone who at Paizo whose name begins with J. Really? No. That's a lot of people.
Yeah,
so, that is a lot of us.
Cubes.
We're like what's the? I can't remember the guys from Buckaroo Banzai who all have the same name.
Oh gosh,
John many Johns, right? John Yaya.
Wow, and it starts with J too.
Yeah.
It doesn't help our case.
It does not. Let's move on to some actual questions here. Jay Bowman, 12,000 again, says that their group is pushing the upgrade limit for medium ships, their medium starship, but don't have the bodies to crew a large ship if combat sidelines any of the PCs. What options can we recommend for a small crew looking to switch to a large ship? I'm just going to go right and say, go out and get that Starship Operations Manual.
Yeah.
You're going to be able to find the rules in there for virtual intelligences that I believe can sort of take on roles for ships that might need more people on them, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Or you could bust up into squadrons and give everybody their own ship.
Sure. Yeah. If that's what your group wants to do, that'd be pretty cool.
Or if you're really looking for a large ship and you are worried, don't worry too much about the minimum. You just have an NPC that is hanging out and cleaning the bathrooms or whatever. Like, it's obviously you want to. We have the minimum complement for a reason, but it's not the firmest of rules. This is your game, and if that's stopping you from having the exact adventure you want to have in space, don't let it. That's what exactly. I say.
There's at least 2 Star Trek movies where the bridge crew of 7 people fly the entire Enterprise by themselves, right?
Yeah,
where they're I've got the engineering panel rigged up like a Christmas tree, Captain. Okay, so if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for us.
Exactly. Those minimum and the sort of minimum maximum crews are more for verisimilitude than sort of anything. Like, of course, this dreadnought has to be crewed by hundreds of people, but again, if you just have the PCs on, they want to fly something big, just hand wave it or give some other explanation, like everyone's got hooked up to nano boosters that read your minds and can do all the other stuff. So cool. Here's a question from Hawali Anot. Will Starfinder ever touch on Earth in the APs or stories? That's like a secret of the Pact World / secrets of the Starfinder setting kind of question, right? Technically, I think we may have said this, that Earth is technically in like another galaxy from the Starfinder setting, and that the way that you get to it in Pathfinder is through, obviously, Baba Yaga's hut, magical woo-woo-ness. So will we ever touch on it? I'm not going to say no, but I think it's personally unlikely. Not while I'm doing any adventures. Not to say that I would never maybe just sort of hint at it here and there, but it's an outside chance at best.
When Owen was still here and I was an editor and he was a developer, we would talk about doing this, and he would frequently remind me that there is canon for it.
Yeah, I mean,
that Earth exists and characters in Pathfinder have gone there, so we could do it, but yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, we have so many other, because as JRock 9430 saying, the vast is huge. We have a lot of other stories to tell, and we'll probably end up getting to them first. Now, if something comes up that is like, you definitely need to go to Earth for some reason, because I'm not really sure what year it would be on Earth, since it was like 1910 and when you went there in Pathfinder. So time, and also would that be time travel? Who knows? Oh my word! Oh, it's making me.
In many ways, that's just really not our game genre. Like our genre is more like Star Wars, where Earth doesn't exist. And there's a million planets out there, and it's the Cantina aliens, and it's not really about Earth. We're not even in a Battlestar Galactica quest for Earth kind of way.
Moving on. Question from TRDG11. Any thoughts to a Kingmaker type AP in the future? Planet or planets exploration for the good of the pack worlds, and then a face. Yeah, I mean, that's on our big. If you've come to any other panels where we talk APs and people have questions like this, what's next? We ever thought about this AP? You ever thought about this AP? We have a big list of APs, and that is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
It depends. It just matters of like, we find the right time and the right story for it. Will we do it?
We all want to do it, but there's a lot of challenge about doing it right.
Now, doesn't mean you can't do it on your own. Isn't that right, Joe? Galaxy Exploration Manual, Piscini.
Sure is. Yeah, my first thought, of course, was the hardcover coming out next year that is all about planets, making planets and exploring planets, and we'll have an exploration subsystem and all sorts of advice written by one Jason Tondro, and developed by one Jason Keeley. So the AP experts telling you how to make adventures and campaigns of your own. So you can definitely, with that book as a tool, you can do it yourself with a lot of expert guidance, which is pretty exciting. But yeah, thanks for that plug. I'm gonna
You're welcome.
poach the next question from JRock 9430.
Oh, yes.
Which is, are you sure Dragonkin can fit into mechs? Yes.
Asked and answered.
Yep.
Here's a question for Jake from Logic Poet. How much will Fly Free or Die use an economy minigame like the Kingdom Caravan or Militia Rules from PFAPs?
Yeah, it does have one. It has a whole merchant rules set up. So you'll have rules for finding, buying, transporting, and selling cargo, which you will buy. You will buy cargo with build points. And then when you sell it, you will get build points. You're trying to buy low, sell high. And then you can use those build points to upgrade your starship. It's an optional rule system. If your group decides you don't want to do it, it's too much, hassle, or you just want to stick with build points going up every time you level the way you normally do, then that's fine. You can do that. But if you are a fan of like the old school Starship economy games, like Traveler or something online like EVE Online, or even a story like Serenity or Firefly, where the characters are constantly trying to get money because they have to fix things on their starship, and there's a pressure there. There's a pressure there to continue to do jobs to keep their starship running. If that's what you want to do, that's sort of built into the Fly Free or Die adventure path, and there's a lot of ways that the adventure path hooks into that system to make use of it. And you can, and if you get up with a lot of build points, you can do all kinds of things with it. You can expand your business. You can hire an agent, for example, in an Absalom Station or in the pack or in the Viscarium or any other system that you want to, who is looking for new jobs for you. So you can end up with this kind of network of NPCs who are your contacts and fixers around the galaxy, which is kind of fun. and has a lot of role play possibilities there too. You can even build a whole new second ship and hire a crew to fly it that does nothing but run jobs, to build your brand and get you more role points. So there's a lot of neat ways that system can now, but as someone else asked on a previous stream, we want to separate it from the credit economy, right? Because if you can sell your heavy laser cannon off of your Starship and use it to buy everybody a bunch of high level gear, well, now both systems are broken. Now your Starship doesn't have the heavy laser cannon it needs to match what we expect it to be able to do, and your group is too overpowered and they can walk through all the encounters that we designed for them. So it's a parallel. It uses the build point system and not the credit system, but there is an economy there, and I hope that you really enjoy it, because Keely and I both worked really hard on it, and I had a lot of help from Joe to help me get the mechanics.
Yeah, and it's something that's not necessarily 100% tied into Fly for Your Dice. If you just want to grab that first volume, get those rules, and then run your own sandbox campaign where everyone's EVE Onlining everywhere, go for it. Moving on, question from Shitreyu. Will there ever be a book devoted to the topic of cyberspace, artificial intelligence, digital environments, perhaps as its own dimensional plane, other native digital life with less sapience than an AI, digital weapons, and digital combat? Basically, a Starfinder version of Tron.
Oh,
well,
good question.
We have a playtest running now for Starfinder. Check it out at starfinderplaytest.com for a new class called the Nanosite, which uses nanites, and a new system for mech building and combat. And as part of that playtest, we revealed the name of a book called Tech Revolution. So while it may not be entirely focused on what you've talked about, I would expect to see some information about what exactly what you're asking about in that book. John Compton is the lead developer on that book, and he definitely has an interest in communicating to the audience via this book and books like this. What is the world like? What is it really like to live in the world where these things are possible and true? And so that's the first thing I think of when you ask that question.
The thing I'm thinking of is Starfinder AP Volume 29, Hive of Minds. It's the 5th volume of the Attack of the Swarm AP. We have an article about mindscapes, which are kind of a more of a psychic thing, sort of taking a little bit from Pathfinder's old Mindscape stuff from like Occult Adventures to represent, this kind of psychic mindscape that you go into in the game. But it also can represent, and we mentioned this in the article, virtual spaces, VR areas where you're controlling something that's not necessarily you. So you can't bring your stuff in, but maybe you can alter it because you're so good at, hacking into the VR that you, enter the cheat for God mode and can do stuff like that. So we touch on it here and there. But Tech Revolution is going to be your best bet for kind of a book on this sort of thing. We talk a little bit about virtual intelligence, at least for starships and Starship Operations Manual. So I got a little bit things here and there. I think it would not be difficult to sort of hack a Starfinder version of Tron just by describing things differently. You could just basically say, hey, everyone make another character, and if you wanted to be like, my mystic is a soldier in the the virtual world, hey, you just have this soldier chassis and your guns have more neon on them than they usually do, and you have normal fights, but then when you die or get reduced to 0 hit points, for instance, you defrag and you wake up from the virtual world. There's things you could easily I think do just by taking the main chunk of rules and just kind of describing them differently.
Yeah, one of the challenge. I love Tron. Like I'm one of the old guys on this show, but I remember that film and I remember watching it in the theater, and I love it with a kind of nostalgic passion. But there's some real challenges in doing it in a game because, as Keely alluded to, it really separates you from all the stuff that's actually your character, right? Like if you're a spellcaster, well, can you still cast spells in cyberspace? If you're a soldier and you rely on your high strength and your physical dexterity, well, why does any of that carry over? It's kind of like a whole nother character creation system, a whole nother universe. And that sounds really fun, unless you're the person that's like, well, I don't get to play my character. I don't, all the reasons why I picked the class that I picked aren't relevant in this cyberspace universe. So it only really works if the whole adventure story is in it. Right? Or if you have 2 characters and you're swapping back and forth. And that requires a lot of investment. That's like a self-contained adventure, or it's a whole adventure path. and that's a tough sell, right? To like, let's do this
yeah.
adventure path where you don't get to actually play your character.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of hard.
It's tricky. I mean, I could always be like, this is the whole adventure path is you are Tron, your program's in Tron, right? And then you just make your character normal. Oh boy, we are getting low on time. So let's do I can't scroll back. I've scrolled too far in chat. I may have missed some questions and I apologize for that. So we're gonna do some lightning round questions. Starting with JRock 9430. Are we going to get an unprecedented level 1 to 20 12 book AP, maybe on the Gap of Mr. Zaglarian? That would be amazing. It sure would. Don't hold your breath for it at the moment. We're working on some other projects, and if we ever want to do that, it would be at least like 2 years in the future. So I'm going to go on that I'm going to just move on from that. Oh gosh, another. I'm going to skip that question. But someone already said yes to the Fast and Furious AP. Yeah. Of course. Hawaiian. Oh, that's what it is. I thought those were L's. It just is Hawaiian Nut. I think I may have pronounced that username weird. Will there be standalone adventures? It's something that we want to be able to do, and it just requires us to figure out how to fit it into our super busy, super tight schedules.
Just jump in and say that Starfinder Society scenarios can often serve as really good standalone adventures if you're looking for that kind of thing.
Great point.
Those bugs got everywhere. Maybe I went too fast because now I don't see.
Yeah, we kind of scrolled past, I think, a lot of them.
I did, and now I can't scroll back for some reason.
No, I did too, yeah.
Because I wanted to see how much scroll was left, and I scrolled too forward, so I apologize. But we only have about 5 minutes left before we have to get a question. I'm just going to scroll really to the end.
While you're looking for questions, I want to plug our new website feature, which is the new Starfinder FAQ and errata page. So if you just Google Starfinder FAQ or Starfinder errata, you will find this page. It's technically at paizo.com/starfinder/FAQ, but who can be bothered? So once you get there, there's a search function that works nicely. You can just type in, if you're looking for something about the spell Slice Reality, or maybe Starship DCs is a popular change that people might be interested in. You can now go there, type in your question, and it'll automatically filter and show you only the answers, either answers or errata that are relevant to you. And we're working on updating that all the time. There's several books represented on there. And then of course we have our forums where a lot of those questions come from initially, where you have the ability to post a question in our rules question forum under Starfinder. Other people, great people, will answer the question for you sometimes. Other times it takes everyone being like, yeah, what is the answer to this? And smashing the FAQ button. And then we get our big glaring, our big red klaxon, which is only in my room now instead of at the office. And then I go, oh, let me answer this for everyone so people can continue to play the game and enjoy it. So that is the Starfinder FAQ. You can find that online, and it's a great newish resource for finding up-to-date answers on pressing rules questions.
Terrific. All right, I've got some questions here. Take a few more of these before we have to end for the afternoon. Question from TRDG11 again. Any thought to a Starfinder hero point system, or would that not work for this? I mean, we have our resolve points. Throwing on hero points on top of that would be tricky. Joe, would you think maybe like there could be a way to use resolve points in a similar fashion?
I think that could be a subsystem in the future, potentially. I'd imagine it would go along with an AP in some regard, like
maybe
a specific story. And then, of course, you can always take that and use it for specific stories that makes sense on. But yeah, resolve points are kind of our...
They're kind of, That doesn't, I mean, obviously they don't give you the rerolls that hero points do in second edition. But, if you want to like say, give everyone like 1 or 2 extra resolve points and say you can also use them to re-roll, but then you get into a whole economy of it, because you got resolve points spending on spells and class abilities and other things. So it might people will probably end up using them mostly on rolls,
including re-rolls. I mean, some re-rolls are powered by resolve points anyway.
Yes, true, fair enough. So moving on to a question from JRock 9430. Hacking could be more interesting than just a computer's roll. Any thoughts?
Tech revolution.
Tech revolution.
Tech revolution is a good thing to keep an eye out for.
Gosh, also J-Rock is asking about a Starfinder video game. Yeah, we'd love one. Here's a big one that we might just end up on because it's such an open-ended question from Don Skurlock Games again. What are some of the challenges we faced in designing Starfinder? And I want to open it up to just sort of like anything that you've worked on since you've come into the team. for Jake. What's your biggest challenge? Let's go also. What was your biggest challenge working on this game in any capacity? A book, a bit of rules text.
Me?
Any one of you, or I'll go
Jake.
first.
I'm thinking.
I'll go first.
That's a wonderful quick question for our last 3 minutes.
Yeah. I thought it would take the last 3 minutes to answer it at least. So this is gonna be our last question.
The biggest challenge. I'll tell you what. The thing that I like the least is inventing 5 different kinds of every kind of gun. So 5 different levels. So when we have to, like, because we have to invent a lot of new gear, we add a lot of new gear and equipment to a lot of APs, and so we're inventing new kinds of equipment, and it quite frankly gets a little bit intimidating. Like, my players, in fact, have said, like, there's just so much stuff. Like, it's kind of overwhelming, the amount of gear in terms of weapons and armor that they can buy and need to have, and so that's a bit of a challenge, I have to confess. Yeah, no, I remember during the first earlier days of Starfinder when we had that list of laser weapons and whatnot, and I think James Sutter was like, we need to come up with, like, so these aren't just like laser weapon, laser gun, laser pistol Mark 1, laser rifle Mark 1. Yeah. So that's where I just started thinking about things like, well, I don't know, Azimuth, Corona. That's where all that came from. That so if you have problems with having all those crazy names, I'm partially to blame for that. Curse you, Keely. Yeah, but I mean, there were already like 4 levels of laser pistol that had to be named. I just had to make the names up. That was a bit of a challenge. Just sort of at the very beginning, the biggest challenge was just sort of this thought of, like, Starfinder needed to kind of really be semi-compatible with Pathfinder first edition stuff. We talk about, like, well, you should be able to just grab some, if you need to. We got, we kind of have weird monsters in first edition, space monsters sometimes too. Maybe grab them and move them forward. But obviously there was so much that had changed. So it became a tricky thought that probably some stuff probably fell through the cracks or didn't get picked up in such a way. That was tricky. It would have been cool if we could just completely. I mean, obviously, it would have still been a D20 game with hit points and class levels and stuff, but to just be able to completely divorce the idea of using any kind of, like, first edition. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. You kind of stole my answer.
Sorry.
But no, it's along the same lines. I think one of my most consistent challenges, design-wise, and even just concept-wise for Starfinder, is that it is not Pathfinder in space. It is its own game system with its own rules and its own setting, and we have a lot of really talented people that are juggling 3 or more systems in their head at any given time, and so it can be tricky to focus in and produce things for Starfinder that are uniquely for Starfinder. But it's a fun challenge. So
indeed. Okay. Well, that just actually brings us up about time. If anyone has, like, maybe any last words, otherwise we are going to turn it on over to Dragons and Things, which will be coming up just next.
Playing Starfinder.
So here's some more fun Starfinder action for you. If you
thank you all for coming. You all make the game. Can't do it without you.
Yes. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you all for listening to us, and please stay tuned for some good Starfinder actual play with Dragons and Things.